Hello. Welcome to Frankenstein Tea, a short story program for adult listeners from the Island Free Library on Block Island. With me, Kristen. I'm the library director for the Island Free Library. Welcome. I try to read a short story every day at 3 p.m. in an effort to keep in contact with you, our patrons, and our community, and with my family and friends, and it's a chance for you to keep in contact with us and each other. And we do that through story and through literature. And today I'm recording. I'm an hour ahead of time. I need to be on a virtual, it's actually a virtual memorial service for my dearest friend's father, who passed away a few months ago. So I'm going to a virtual memorial service, which is, I guess, how we roll in 2021. I haven't done this part of virtual life yet, but doing so happily. Well, not happily, but I'm happy to participate and be there with my friends. And so I need to record. So here I am recording. But I'm not far. I'm going to be sitting right here on that memorial service while my story that I'm about to read gets pushed out into the public on YouTube. So it's sort of like I'm sitting here. I will be sitting here. I'll just be at a different event than the one you're listening to, or something like that. I don't know. Who knows? But something like that. So I have a fun. I think it's fun. We'll see. I don't know. This guy is usually fun. This is BJ Novak. The name of his book here is One More Thing: Stories and Other Stories. It was published by Knopf in 2014. There he is. I think he's famous for The Office, probably other things too, but I know him from The Office. My son was a big fan of The Office. And I've read things from this book before, and they can be quite funny and entertaining and interesting, and maybe quirky would be a word I might use, or offbeat. And I read one that I liked. It's a little dark, though, as you know. So I'm going to read this one, which I haven't read all the way through, and I'm going to trust that it'll entertain us. So here I go. Then I'm going to sign off quickly and get on to my next event. So forgive me, but here I am. This is BJ Novak. Quantum Non-Locality and the Death of Elvis Presley. You may remember a time when the most common headline to see on a tabloid newspaper and the checkout aisle of the supermarket was that Elvis Presley had been seen alive. And you may remember that sometime around 1994, all these newspapers stopped saying that around the same time. The papers had been making it all up. None of the pictures were real, and none of the details had anything to do with anything. But they were right, too. People just can't accept the fact that the king is dead, one woman sighed to her son when he pointed to such a headline in a Kroger checkout aisle in 1986. Back when children were confused by newspapers that contradicted other newspapers. Behind them in line stood the dead king himself, holding Wonder Bread, peanut butter, Tylenol, and a magazine about something else entirely. It had, in fact, been Elvis who couldn't accept that he was alive, who at a certain specific point could no longer understand on any level how this fat and tired man in Memphis, this man who combed his thinning hair and slept in his freckled skin, could possibly share the same name and memories as the most mythical creature that the world in his day had known. It wasn't simply that he had gained weight or gained years or transformed in any natural human way that would have made sad but rational sense to anyone. It was something deeper inside, something that told him that, as strange as it sounded, there wasn't any true, unbroken line anywhere directly connecting the man in whom he stood and Elvis. 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 Who really could be Elvis? He could trace it only as far back as a particular Monday morning when he poured himself a bowl of cereal, as he did every day, turned on the television, sat down on his sofa, and then found himself suddenly overcome by a loud, hollow echo of a feeling, starting somehow in his ears, that told him that the old feeling had been gone for some time. He spent the next few days waiting for this new feeling to fade away, but as the hours and moods came and went, the feeling didn't. He wandered the hallways of his Elvis-themed home, squinting into the framed photographs on the walls. The black and white photographs looked like Elvis, but not like him. The color photographs looked like him, but not like Elvis. He looked in the mirror, and the person he saw looked like him, and it looked like Elvis, but it didn't look like he was Elvis. He wrote down his name on a pad of paper and stared at it. Elvis. It looked like the Roman numerals for a made-up number, a number of a jumbled, undecipherable value, which was at least closer to how he felt than anything else so far. It was strange to think that he wasn't Elvis anymore, but it was even stranger to think that he ever had been. After a few months of worrying a lot and trying not to worry, Elvis started to wonder seriously if the feeling that he definitely was who he had once been would ever come back at all, except in out-of-focus flashes after a lot of pills. It didn't make any sense, thought Elvis, but somehow the line that makes someone the same person from day to day must have snapped inside him when he wasn't paying attention, which had been, he admitted to himself with a shameful shudder, a lot of the time. A knot had untied, a hinge had popped. He didn't know the exact intricacies of the mechanics of the soul. He was simply a singer, or Elvis was anyway, or had been. But in any case, however it had happened, the man he was now had just kept on going, unaware and untethered to whatever had once made him Elvis. And by the time he had realized it and turned back around, the real Elvis had somehow left the building. But Elvis wasn't going to give up something as big as being Elvis without a fight. If Elvis wanted to feel like Elvis again, thought Elvis, he was going to act like Elvis. Elvis came up with a plan. He would set out on a live tour across America, the grandest of his age. He would wear a suit of sparkling jewels, something that only a king of rock and roll could wear. He would sing each and every one of Elvis's hits, one after another, while standing in front of a giant flashing sign that said, Elvis, just so there would be no mistaking for him or anyone else who he was. He did it, and each night he felt like Elvis again for a couple of hours. But then the day after each show, he would feel worse than before. In the tender light of early afternoon, he would realize all over again that the person on stage the night before was still not quite Elvis, except now. He would realize in a panic the situation was far worse, now that all these thousands of people had seen this not quite Elvis and had been told in no uncertain terms that this was Elvis. That meant this new, almost Elvis, was replacing and erasing, show by show, 10,000 by 10,000, the Elvis that he did know for sure had once been real and true and not this. He wanted to die. No, that wasn't it. He wanted to breathe and eat and remember, to laugh at funny movies and practice his karate. But the more he kept living his life trying to be this other person, the more he knew he was harming that person. And he loved that other person more than he loved himself. And he knew that he wasn't crazy because everyone else did too. He told the colonel that it was time for Elvis to die. He wasn't as articulate as he should have been, given the sensitive nature of the request. But luckily, the colonel understood. The colonel always did. I'll take care of it, said Colonel Tom Parker. And on August 16th, 1977. The body of Elvis Presley was found dead in Graceland. Elvis woke up in Las Vegas. For a while, he couldn't tell if he was in heaven or hell, but when he realized he was in Las Vegas, he knew he'd be okay. Now that the king was dead, the man could do as he wished. Elvis wondered what a regular person who wasn't Elvis would do now, and he reasoned that person would get a job. He looked around for something that paid well enough for work he would be able to do. Before long, he found such a job and became an Elvis impersonator. Once again, he was the best in the world at something he loved. "You're incredible," people would tell him after his shows. "Incredible." "Thank you. Thank you very much." Afterward, when he walked down the street, people would wave at him happily, affectionately, and most exciting of all, casually. "Hey, it's Elvis." He would wave back the same way, and they'd both smile and forget about the moment a moment later. He was finally who he had long wanted to be, a person for whom Elvis Presley was a major part of his life, but not everything. And then there was the undeniable and all-American pleasure of being well paid for a job he found easy. It wasn't the best time of his life. He had, after all, once been Elvis. Elvis. But it wasn't the worst time of his life anymore either. It was a time of his life. Elvis died the second time in 1994, this time of a heart attack in the early morning hours at the breakfast counter of a diner on South Las Vegas Boulevard. A waitress found him over a grilled cheese sandwich with an untouched half a grapefruit to its side. The only identification he had on him said Elvis Aaron Presley, with the birth date 1/8/35 and the address of Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee. This was something that happened from time to time in Las Vegas. The second time, Elvis died happy. And that was the moment, almost to the hour, that the tabloids stopped making up stories that Elvis had been seen here or there and started making up things about people everyone already knew were alive, a tradition that continues to this day. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Or maybe when something that big is out there, a presence that size, it just doesn't go undetected. It has to be sensed and said by someone in some way. Quantum Non-Locality and the Death of Elvis Presley by B.J. Novak. Thanks so much for coming. I'll have another short story for you tomorrow at 3 p.m. On this YouTube channel for another episode of Frankenstein Tea. Thanks for coming to this one. I'm off. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Miss ya, love ya. Peace.